guys, this is Nori with More Mana Gaming. I'm here with Collin and his fantastic Liam Kyte deck. You want to tell us about it?
Yeah. So I played Liam Kyte here at the championship. We lost in top 8, but had a pretty good run up until that point. Playing a lot of odd cards that people wouldn't really expect out of Liam Kyte, to say the least. So going into it, my game plan was there are 2 very obvious best cards in the game, and I kind of want to play both of them. So we started with an Iskandar and a Sylphia in our deck, and kind of built on it from there, you know. So obviously both of these cards are just game-changing in themselves. They demand an answer, usually a Corona Shard, by themselves. So together, if you get both of them, then usually that's all it takes. So these are definitely the central points of the deck. Going into it for shards, we play 3 Zephyr Crystals, as every Kyte deck should. Honestly, even if you're not playing Kyte, you should probably play 1 or 2 of these. There's so much stuff going around that it's relevant for. Every deck should have at least 1, if not 2 Zephyr Crystals. We also play Corona Shard, as does most decks. It's just the best shard available right now as an answer specifically to these 2 cards right here. There's not much else in the game that can answer them cleanly, so you really need that available. Then for towers, we just play the same basic 5. Nothing special with them. The air tower could get interesting. I've considered it, but you take a couple towers early, generally speaking, so it's kind of hard to trigger those effects, even if you wanted them. So yeah, that's what we play for towers.
Tower won't work with this deck, but you'll see why.
Yeah,
of course. It's not the traditional Liam Kyte as you'll see.
Of course. So to start us off, we play 9 gears. So we've got 1 Longinus. We've got 3 Kaliburs as our rare gears. Then we play 2 Sharddaggers for quickness. And we play 3 1-drop gears. This is just for our Corum Squire to find for its ruined effects. Kalibur is to kind of cycle through your deck, draw as many cards as possible. Longinus is just a very, very good utility card to equip with Iskandar or another card we'll get into later. And Shardagger to give your Iskandar haste. 2 of them is very important, otherwise one of them will get popped by your Zephyr Crystal. Then your Iskandar can't really do its thing, can't break the 2 towers. So definitely play 2 of these. 3 Kaliburs is a must. And yeah, that's what I'd definitely stick with for the gears. So next, we have 3 Corum Squires as the kind of heart and soul of every white deck. It's just the best 1-drop in the game and probably will be for a very, very long time. Being able to kill towers early, not have to worry about hitting like a darkness, a light, or water, and get your stuff messed with is really good. And even if you hit the fire tower, you're going to draw a card off of it and then draw a card off your Liam as well. So it's just by far one of the most important cards in the deck. Suited up with a Kalibur, now you got a 2k beater that can't be stolen by an allurement or anything like that, and it'll just carry you through the early game. Then next for continuing our creatures, we play 3 Yukis. As you'll see as we get a little bit later into the deck, people very fastly realize that they need to be the aggressor, and as soon as they start taking your towers, dropping a Yuki or 2 is really, really good. Suited up with a Kalibur or Longinus, now you get a 3k target attack. One of the biggest answers, generally speaking, to a Liam Kyte deck is Iakuma Juggernaut. Tons of it running around if you go to any of these tables. People love the card. It obviously just shuts down aggro decks by being able to guard, but when you have a Yuki, you suit it up with a Kalibur, you give it 500 from a Liam effect, your 3500 target attack, you can just roll it over, and there's nothing they can really do about it. Beyond that, it also gets rid of all the problem cards like Rudy, gets rid of Avarices that are sticking around in play, just because you always get the 500 from Liam, or you can give it any gear that you want to keep it going. Even casting it for 3 isn't too bad if you're put in that position, so it's definitely worth the occlusion. Then next up, we got 3 Mels. You'll see this in pretty much any sort of Iskandar-based deck. Obviously, you're trying to fill up your grave as much as you can to get your Iskandar as cheap as possible, and cycling through, drawing a bunch of cards while putting a 1500 body on the field to break towers is just fantastic. Let alone if you get a Rudy with it, you draw 4, it's just the best feeling in the world, honestly. So Next up, we got a card that I'm sure everyone will have to read, as did every single opponent I played against. We're playing 2 Artreds. So this guy is a 6-cost, 4,000 Guardian that ETB does Iskandar's effect. You get to equip any 2 gears from your grave and put them onto him. So generally speaking, you'll play this guy on 6, and you'll search out a Kalibur that you drew and a Longinus that you got off of your Liam effect, equipment to him. Now you got a 6K Guardian that draws you a card, can't be targeted by spells, and can deal 1,500 to something whenever you want. It's just by far one of the most annoying things to deal with this deck. As they stare across the board from this, they're like, well, I can Corona Shard it, but if I do, then there's a Sylphia coming, there's an Iskandar coming, and I won't have an answer to those. So I guess this guy will stick around. And yeah, it just stops your opponents in their tracks every single time.
It's nice playing Argent rares when they're not Argent rares, and that guy does a really good job at it, right?
Exactly. He is fantastic. Then next up, we got the green cards. We got 3 Kazes. It's probably the only green card. If somebody were to tell me to cut other than Sylphia, I would tell them that they're crazy. This card, it just really makes it impossible for your opponent to be able to kill you. As you put up all these Guardians, they try to swing through. Maybe they'll use a removal spell to kill your Guardian. To try and deal that damage, you just Kaze it. Now they can't break your next tower. It lets you completely tap out to cast all your big threats like Artred and not have to worry about them. Well, maybe they can, if they Corona Shard it, they can break a couple towers. You don't have to worry about that when you have Kazes defending you. Next up for the green cards, we play 1 Greathawk of Cloudsea. By far the most fun card to play with in the deck. Outside of bouncing and tapping your opponent's stuff to clear their field, you can also use it as kind of a way to loop your Iskandar. If you get 9, say you got 9 gears in your grave later in the game, you play your Iskandar for 1, attack, break their towers, then you can Greathawk, which lets you bounce any unit, bounce your own Iskandar to your hand, play it for 1 again, break a couple more towers, then you have your Kyte effect, bounce your Greathawk, play it again, cast your Iskandar again, and do it as many times until your opponent's dead, obviously.
That's breaking 5 towers on a turn, actually. So
yeah,
it's possible that you could catch
it's
up
very, very easy to break 5 towers doing some of that nonsense in the late game because of this 1 card. Next up, I play 1 Royal Deflection. That's kind of a cute techie card against Nanatsus, which are pretty popular on the day, as well as your opponent's Corona Shard when they try to hit your Iskandar, hit your Sylphia. Instead of hitting your guy, they're hitting their own. So it's really, really good. If your opponent Nanatsus, you usually redirect it to itself, have it kill itself instead of one of your own guys. It's just anytime that I have this card in my hand, I feel like it's almost impossible to lose because my opponent's going to have to cast something to answer one of my big threats. And at that point, they're going to be answering their own big threat. So that protection is really, really nice. Then lastly, for our last 2 green cards, I played 2 Nanatsus. Just one of the best, if not the best, mid-range card to cast on 4. So long as even 1 tower is broken, you can exhaust your opponent's unit. Then it's a 2,500, which is bigger than most things at this cost. So it'll be able to break things or kill things even without gears. And if you need to give it a little bit of a boost, well, luckily you're playing white. You can give it a boost with any gears. It also shines the most in this deck out of any Nanatsu deck, I would say, because the number 1 answer to this card in the entire game is Dust Strike, as a clean answer to it. But when you're playing Liam, you can give it plus 500. So it completely stops Dust Strike from being viable on Nanatsu, and it just makes the card really, really good in the deck. So that's it for our green cards. Next up, we got the colorless. So we'll start with our Silver Watchwoman. We just play 1 as a easy to access quickness thing that can't get disrupted by Zephyr Crystals, and is able to break towers at your leisure whenever you need to search something out with Liam, or later in the game if they got 1 tower that's being annoying, you can take it out whenever you need to. We were playing Brant for a little while, but we found there were a couple of decks in the game that wouldn't take your 3 towers until it was a little bit too late, and it was really nice to be able to have that quickness available without having 3 of your own towers destroyed. So Brant is definitely a consideration if you're playing against a lot more people who are destroying your towers early. If not, I would stick with the one Watchwoman to always have access to it. Then probably the most universal card played in almost every deck. We play one Rudy. As I said earlier, if you play a Mel, that's drawing 4 cards as a 3-cost 1500 body, which is pretty good. Outside of that, we also have Nanatsu as a way to get more counters. They'll get you that 4 counters much easier. We have Artred, which with that guy does the same as Iskandar, in that instead of equipping 2 gears, now you're equipping 4, which is just a wee bit better, I would say. And then lastly, obviously, we have Sylphia here, who instead of just getting rid of all their evens or their odds, now it gets rid of both.
Get rid of the board is phenomenal.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess there is one other arrive effect that I almost forgot, is our other colorless cards. We play 3 Statue at the Argent Towers, a card that's been popping up a lot recently in people's deck lists, now that we don't have access to Aragon to constantly put things back on top of our deck. It just lets you shuffle back in all of your late game threats. You can shuffle back in your Nanatsus, your Artreds, your Iskandars, your Sylphias, your Rudis, your Mels, and just continue as you draw through your entire deck to get more to those cards that will finish the game for you.
And you can say because you get to the late game, your deck is usually very thin, so shuffling back 3 cards means you're very likely to see those cards.
Yeah, exactly. This deck thins it out super quickly. With Liam, you're constantly searching. You got Corum Squires. When they die, they're going to search out a gear. You got Mels, they're going to draw you 2 cards. This card's going to draw a card. You're constantly thinning out your deck, so you get to that late game where it looks like you're going to deck out, but actually it just means that you can Iskandar, hit them if they kill it. Okay, Statue, shuffle it back in, draw it, play it again, and continue doing that until your opponent's dead, because they'll certainly run out of towers before you run out of statues, I promise you that. Lastly, let's see what we got. We got our white spells. So one of the more controversial things, talking to some people, I only play 1 supply deal. As kind of odd as it seems for a deck that's trying to draw through, I found if you're playing too many of them, you can really kind of run out of threats and not have enough things to do in that mid-game to that late game by constantly drawing yourself out of relevant cards. To find spot for 2 more of these, I'd have to cut one of my actual threats that's applying pressure to my opponent, and I find that really hard to do. And honestly, the deck has no issues drawing through with the access to the Mels. You got the Statues to shuffle back in your Mels, Rudy to double all of that, and supply deal is just kind of a nice thing to have, maybe here or there. Then we have 3 Hikaris as a way to make more creatures as well as blockers if you really need to, although I wouldn't rely on them too much, as if they kill your blockers, then the attack's going to get redirected, and that's never good. But if you play it on 2, you can suit it up with a Kalibur, you can suit it up with a Longinus. Now you have a relevant body that's going to be able to stop all that early game nonsense. And later as you go, once it gets to the end, you maybe drop like a Hikari or 2. Now you got 2 1,000 or 4 1,000 power guys at instant speed that they were not expecting, and they can really do the finish for you. If you got Liam to give them that additional 500 if you need it, or just hard casting the gear on them as well to get that over that bump. Or worst case, you can send 2 of them at a tower and they'll get the job done. Then lastly, the card that people honestly expected it less than Artred is 2 finishing rays out of a Liam Kyte deck. People do not expect. All of my opponents would think they're getting ahead by putting a bunch of creatures into play against the Liam Kyte deck, because that's normally what you want to do. It's the way that you can stop them from applying all that pressure with their normal 1-drops. But as soon as they do that, then you can bounce your own green guys to your hand with Kyte, or if you have a Corum Squire, then it's just better for you. Drop the finishing ray, completely clear out their board, whatever nonsense they're trying to stall you out with, and not have to worry about it anymore.
So if there was like any threat that you couldn't deal with, you always at least had an answer. So.
Yeah. Between these 4 cards you see in play right now, there's always an answer. Nothing in the game right now can survive any of these cards. So no matter what you're sitting across the table from, whatever annoying nonsense they got, you got an answer to it.
Fantastic. It's great to hear on a control deck. So the last one we have to ask is, do you have any shout-outs?
Yeah, shout out my shop here, Sunshine Games. I'm one of the owners there, and we do card games just like anything else. You might find us on TCG Player. We're one of the bigger sellers on there. We do Argent Saga, Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, all that sort of stuff. Also, if you so happen to be in Florida, that's where we're located, is Tampa, Florida. So come check us out, and worst case, we also have a regional here in 2 weeks. So hopefully I'll see some people
We'll
there.
try to get this out by then. So, of course, this is Nori with More Mana Gaming. I'd like to thank Colin again, and I'll check you guys out later.
Thank you.